Classical Greece, cradle of the modern Western mind, fountain of democracy, philosophy, reason, and eternal myth. Greek poets sang of a fantastic age before recorded time, an age of gods and heroes, of monsters and epic wars. Until our own century, it was believed that these were merely fables. A brilliant Englishman named Arthur Evans would show us the songs of the poets held a deeper truth. He would discover the Minoans, a dazzling civilization lost in time, builders of the mythic labyrinth, even the nation of lost Atlantis. Atlantis, mystery of the Minoans. Late in the 19th century, historians maintain that the glory of classical Greece burst like a brilliant sun from prehistoric darkness. There is no evidence that any Western civilization preceded the rise of the Greeks 800 years before Christ. Arthur Evans will spend a lifetime pushing back the boundaries of history. Arthur Evans is born in 1851, an era of scientific revolution. His father, John, is a millionaire and pioneer archaeologist. The work of John Evans pushes the dawn of human civilization farther and farther back in time, a concept rejected by the Oxford academic elite. Now young Arthur Evans enters the fray. By the time he is 30, he has made his mark as a scholar and a rather wild adventurer. In 1882, the wandering Evans serves time in a Bosnian jail for supporting radicals trying to overthrow Austrian rule. Compared to such escapades, Oxford life bores him. He is anxious to set out on another great adventure, and recent discoveries in Greece give him the excuse he needs. The cause for Evans' excitement? Incredible finds made by a German named Heinrich Schliemann. Schliemann has followed a trail nearly 3,000 years old. The trail of Homer, the great blind bard, whose masterwork was the Western world's first war story. The Iliad, the chronicle of the bloody Greek assault on the city-state of Troy to rescue the beautiful Helen. A desperate mission that turned to victory when the Greeks tricked the Trojans, entering the city hidden in a giant wooden horse. In 1873, Heinrich Schliemann, the Iliad in one hand and a shovel in the other, announces that he has found the ruins of ancient Troy in modern Turkey. Buried beneath millennia of rubble, the German uncovers a great ancient city he believes can only be Troy. And as Schliemann's wife models a priceless headdress found in the ruins, he proclaims Helen of Troy reborn. At Troy, myth has been made real. But now Arthur Evans is heading for Schliemann's latest and most spectacular find, Mycenae, the mystic city of the glory of the Greeks. To Homer, Mycenae was the citadel of the great king Agamemnon, leader of the Greek assault on Troy. A fortress whose massive brooding walls have been set in place by the giant Cyclops. Here again, the words of Homer lead Schliemann to astounding discoveries. Tombs worthy of ancient nobles, the swords of Agamemnon's army, the gold of the royal court, and, Schliemann believes, the golden death mask of Agamemnon himself, a mighty king, according to legend, murdered by his own wife. Arthur Evans is obsessed by the riddle of Mycenae. Once it had been a bastion of wealth, power, and artistry, but then, suddenly, Mycenae crumbled, doomed to survive only in the lyric lines of Homer. A fortress on Greek soil, yet so different from classical Greece. He wonders, who lived here? Evans is convinced a people advanced enough to construct this great city must have been literate.
Throughout what is now the civilized European area, there must have once existed systems of picture writing such as still survive among the more primitive races of mankind.
It is the destiny of Arthur Evans to unravel the mystery. In Athens, after meeting with Schliemann at his home, questions race through Evans' mind. Among the artifacts from Mycenae, there is one that puzzles him, an ancient ring decorated with the image of an octopus. Why would the landlocked Mycenaeans use the octopus as an emblem? Evans speculates, was Mycenae merely one outpost of the ancient Mediterranean world? 1949, after decades of study and searching, Arthur Evans has found a lost civilization older than classical Greece, older than mysterious Mycenae.
The extraordinary phenomenon, nothing Greek, nothing Roman. Nay, its great age goes well back to the pre-Mycenaean period.
On April 5th, after only 2 weeks of work, Arthur Evans becomes the first man in 3,500 years to gaze upon the face of an ancient son of Crete. Not Greek, what then? For 20 years, the English scholar Arthur Evans has searched for the historical origin of Greek myth. Now, on the island of Crete, he finds it. Walls and floors, pottery of an unknown style, the works of a mysterious civilization to be scrupulously examined by Duncan Mackenzie.
Evans was extremely lucky when Mackenzie came with him to Knossos, because I don't think Evans really had a great deal of knowledge about the practicalities of field excavation and how one has to excavate carefully layer by layer in order to determine the chronology of what one is digging. And so Mackenzie's contribution to the excavations here at Knossos was absolutely crucial.
Mackenzie concludes that Knossos is nearly 5,000 years old, and that a great dynasty ruled this land until around 1400 BC, then vanished. Evans names this lost world Minoan, after the legendary ruler of Crete, King Minos. He has discovered the royal palace of a forgotten empire. On April 13th, 1900, the workers uncover this elegant chamber at the heart of the royal palace. To Evans, the throne room of King Minos, the oldest throne in Europe. Evans will spend the rest of his life in the pursuit and the resurrection of the glory of the Minoan world. Frescoes show a society of graceful noblewomen at leisure, of daring young men vaulting over the horns of mighty bulls. In these vivid paintings, Evans sees the legendary combat of Theseus and the Minotaur brought to life. Throughout the palace, images of the sacred bull, symbol of virility and power, echoes of timeless myths. Myths of bulls and of the goddess of the snakes, a palace consecrated to faith and ritual. Evans finds huge warehouses of jars that once were filled with grain, honey, oil, and wine, thousands of gallons at a time. He wonders if these great sunken chambers also had a more ominous function.
With what object were these walled pits constructed? It does not seem unreasonable to recognize in these deep-sunk walled chambers the dungeons of the palace. The longer chamber holding several prisoners, the smaller perhaps for solitary confinement. The groans of these Minoan dungeons may well have found an echo in the tale of Theseus.
The sheer scale of Knossos is overwhelming. 1,400 rooms, far bigger than Buckingham Palace, sprawling over 6 acres. The Minoans even had running water and a system of sewage drains 1,500 years older. The Minoans even had running water and a system of sewage drains 1,500 years older than the famous Roman aqueducts. An engineering marvel of the ancient world. Conveniences not even enjoyed by some of Evans' English countrymen in 1900. In one room, Evans believes he has found the bathing chamber of the Queen herself. Again, he is transported through time to an elegant room of comfort and grace. But to the Englishman, the most precious of the gifts of ancient Knossos is not its architecture. It is a series of tablets impressed with an unknown hieroglyphic text.
We have found a kind of baked clay bar, rather like a stone chisel in shape, though broken at one end with script on it and what appear to be numerals. I must have about 700 pieces by now. It's extremely satisfactory, as it's what I came to Crete to find.
Evans identifies two types of script, which he calls Linear A and Linear B. But to read them, Arthur Evans will have to break their fascinating code. More and more, Evans is convinced that Knossos, not Mycenae, was the civilization that presaged classical Greece. A capital without defensive walls, a center of culture, comfort, and peace, entered by the oldest road in Europe. The Minoan houses of Santorini are virtually intact, some of them 2 stories tall. Frescoes have been perfectly preserved, vivid with the artistry of a vanished people. Among the most famous, the fishing boy. For decades, the English scholar Arthur Evans attempted to decipher 2 forms of written script from the palace of Knossos on the island of Crete. He never succeeded. But in 1936, when he was 85 years old, Evans lectured to an audience of school children on the undeciphered Minoan scripts he called Linear A and Linear B. In the audience was a 14-year-old boy named Michael Ventris, who decided then and there that he would be the one to break the code. It takes him 16 years, but he succeeds. He deciphers Linear B. Ventris has pushed back the dawn of the West by 1,000 years. The names on the Linear B tablets are those of Greek legends: Hector, Achilles, Poseidon, Zeus. Proof that Western culture did not begin with the Acropolis, with Homer or Plato. It began with the Minoans. Tragically, Michael Ventris dies in an automobile accident in 1956, before he is able to decode the even older script, Linear A. That language remains undeciphered today.
acest fragment de pe columnă vedem o casă dacă arzând. Așa cum probabil romanii au făcut.
No video and two.
Ok, În acest fragment copiat de pe columnă, romanii își prezintă
In March 2015, I visited Egypt to investigate. Wandering around these fantastic sites and seeing these statues and artifacts, you cannot help being overwhelmed by the size and the scale, the precision, the symmetry, and the overall quality of the craftsmanship. But there was something else we noticed. If we have a close-up look at the cartouche on this statue, we can see that a rectangular work area was cleared from the belt before the cartouche was carved. Now this implies that the statue and the cartouche were not created at the same time. On this example, again, if we have a close-up look, we can see that the cartouche this time actually cuts across the sword, somewhat thoughtlessly, and again it seems as though the statue and cartouche were created at different times by different people. It also looks like the creator of the cartouches was not as skilled as the creator of the statues themselves and also used inferior tools. These statues are from the Nubian Museum, and again the same pattern can be found. Very good quality statue, very poor quality hieroglyphs, very good quality statue, very poor quality hieroglyphs, and again same thing, very good quality statue and very poor quality hieroglyphs. But the best examples by far of this graffiti, as we came to call it, are found in the Serapeum at Saqqara.
These writings are related to the late period.
Yeah.
Not more than 500 BC, for sure. But we can see is how they laid the writings in this way. It's not so professional even as the dynastic Egyptians. Look at this.
Yeah.
It's so crude.
It's dreadful.
Here,
Here,
the tool that they used, I know this exactly because I carved stones.
Yeah.
The tool slid over that part.
Yeah.
Because it was not sharp enough to even mark it. So we tried to do deeper ones here. You can see that this is not the same like depth or strength that was used here.
Yeah.
Still, they could not even draw a straight line on the surface after what we saw on the corners and the edges, and that it reflects very powerful machining. We come to the writings, and it also reflects very poor technique.
Yes.
So that's why we can tell for sure that these writings were laid on this books in a much later era.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's what we use in Egyptology to date and relate and identify this artifact. Look how crude this is.
Yeah. Yeah.
We cannot really depend on this graffiti.
Yeah.
I would call it hieroglyphic graffiti.
Yeah.
To understand what was this made for.
Two different
originally.
people. Two different people. One made the box, one did the graffiti.
So the writings was made, one made the box in a much more ancient era. Because if you have the tool to create this surface, you will still have tools to create fine art or fine work.
Based on the physical evidence, it seems that a very advanced civilization with superior stoneworking abilities existed before the Egyptians. And it was this civilization, not the Egyptians, who built the pyramids and all of the big clever stuff you see in Egypt. Something then happened to this civilization, some kind of catastrophic event, and all that may have happened next was that the Egyptians moved into the ruins and deserted cities. They carved their signatures onto the statues, they painted the walls their colors, and claimed all of this work as their own. This theory may contrast with the approved version of ancient history we've all been taught, but it's backed up with numerous examples of physical evidence and also explains why there are no hieroglyphs, paintings, or wall reliefs that depict pyramid construction. The Egyptians didn't know how it was done. Just consider how powerful you would become at the time if you could simply convince all of your visitors and potential enemies that all of this stuff is yours.
Possible that some sort of cataclysmic event brought that thing down? I mean, look at the Colossi of Memnon, like I mentioned earlier. 60 feet tall, weighing 720 tons apiece, carved from one solid piece of quartzite. What on earth would it take to burn that thing? Quartzite melts at approximately 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So, I mean, guys, this is something far more than some gasoline dumpster fire by an angry mob. I mean, just look at this thing. Something incredible happened to it. And I made a video on this. It's one of my earlier videos. And by the way, this stone, the closest site they have where quartzite could have come from, is about 200 miles away. So how on earth or why on earth would they bring something so big and so heavy this far? But going back to the evidence of a cataclysm, why are they finding vast amounts of melt glass throughout the Mideast? From Libya, Egypt, Syria. So what on earth would it take to do this? Either an atomic bomb, which that's not where my bet is on, or an asteroid cosmic impact or an airburst.